Hello friends and enemies, welcome to or back to Happy For Now. I'm here with a Romancelandia mini for you because as last month's Romancelandia dropped, more on this situation has come out, and I feel like even now as I'm filming this one, we're getting more things, but I feel like I need to set a baseline, like a timeline, and like a what happened situation with this so that we have something to build off going forward, because truly, who knows? Who knows what is going to happen? The bombshell drop as of the end of last month's Romancelandia is that Blake Lively filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department to get the okay to sue form, because that's how it works in California, for employment discrimination and harassment. And that is what happened, okay? Like, that is what happened literally the day the video, like right before the video went up. It was like Friday afternoon leading into the holidays. So one thing I want to keep in mind is we have this entire discussion. We can dislike things Blake Lively has done and all that, but we also can see that she perhaps potentially was mistreated, as were others on set, by Justin Baldoni and others involved in Wayfarer Productions. Both of these things can literally be true at the same time. Both items can be true at the same time, okay? So I want you to like absorb that for a second, because I feel like a lot of what I'm seeing around this whole situation is a very like this side or that side. And if you do like I did and read the complaint from Blake and some of the stuff coming out from Justin, I started to piece together a picture here. But yeah, we can dislike Blake, but she can also be a victim. I will say that. Like, that is a very key point that I think a lot of people are not able to hold in their brain at the same time. I was definitely like in a sit back and wait mode after the movie premiered in August of last year, because I felt like there were some things off. And people that I super duper trust that cover pop culture and I know have connections to people that tell them things, again, people that I trust though, were saying there's something else that's going to come out and it's not looking good. But they couldn't say what or when it was coming out. And fair. That is absolutely fair. So I knew, like, okay, we've got to just sit back and wait this out for a minute. And something in the way the marketing cycle was going, as far as like the articles about Blake and how pro Justin people were being, felt interesting. There was definitely a big media circus during the premiere around things. And I think, you know, obviously a lot of people are going to be thrown by the fact that people had all unfollowed Justin that were in the movie. No matter when that had happened, I think that could be a surprise. And also the fact that he was not in photos with the rest of the cast. So like, I think that's alarming, and I think we all had a right to be like, this is weird. Something's off. Because something was off. And I've got a timeline that I've put together from the legal documents. And then I also have stuff that stood out to me when I read the brief. So we're going to talk about the timeline to current day, which will be January 10th. And then we are going to talk about what stood out to me in the complaint from Blake. So first up, this is from what we know. Again, if you read the legal documents from Blake and Justin, you should be able to piece this together as well. You're just gonna have to use some critical thinking skills. So like, if you don't want to believe me, go read the things, because I went and read everything for myself as well, because I wanted to confirm the things that I was hearing and what I was seeing talked about. So first up, around January 4th, 2024, they're getting ready to go back to filming for this movie, and demands were given to Wayfarer Studios that needed to be met for people to be willing to come back on set, including Blake Lively. They agreed, like Justin Baldoni and his team at Wayfarer agreed to these terms, which included no retaliation. So I find some of the things that happen later very fascinating, because they feel very retaliatory to me from things that were in a signed contract that were going to happen. We will talk about some of those demands in a minute, because that's a whole other discussion of like what was in the complaint. They've agreed to this. Movie starts filming again. July 31st, Justin hires the PR team he hires, which are the same PR team that Johnny Depp had. And I, in the first Romancelandia, when we talked about this, I said, who knows? It could have been a recommendation and it wasn't really thought about, but we see what this PR team does. And I don't think it was an afterthought who he picked. The PR team decides to create fake accounts to help push a narrative against Blake Lively. Like, that's their initial meeting on the 31st. They get back together on like August 2nd to start planning scenarios about what they can say about Blake Lively to the media, to like push on the production issues being her, and that, you know, we can weaponize her feminism. And then this also is where some of these texts that we see in the briefs for the filings show up, including texts that Justin has shared as his receipts, so to speak. But again, to me, all these receipts that he showed, some of the receipts that I have read from Justin show that they kind of just reinforce some of the other things laid out in the other claim. Then on August 5th, 2024, the day before the movie premiere, Justin Baldoni texts his PR team a Hailey Bieber article wanting something like that against Blake Lively. And then they want to focus on Reddit, TikTok, and Instagram. This is all from text messages we see in these filings, okay? August 6th, the day of the movie premiere, a billionaire involved in the production company Wayfarer Studios is willing to spend like $100 million to bury Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds and just destroy them. Fascinating. Then August 8th, one of the PR team members says, let's not plan any more stories now because I'm involved. We need to like not do that. Then August 10th, that again is another text. August 10th, the PR team is nervous because the narrative is shifting some. Majority of the press is pro Justin and he's very lucky for how it played out. Text between the PR group around they need him to realize how lucky this has been and that they need to like get a handle on it maybe because it could go bad really quickly. August 15th, his PR team is bragging in texts about how it's going so well. August 16th, there's a text that said you really outdid yourself with this piece. She's like, I didn't do the piece, that wasn't me. But even though it looks like I did, Justin Baldoni doesn't want it to look like that he planted the stories. And it's starting to become obvious because the PR team is coming up in the stories. So it's almost like we're being fed these things and then it's like from XYZ PR team mentioned in the stories. That's always a red flag. And they're feeling like it's starting to look too much like a smear campaign. August 18th, again, more articles. It's kind of starting to ruin the movie promotion. So that's fascinating. August 19th, there are texts outlining how it looks like they are trying to take down Blake Lively, and that is not what they want the outcome to be. Except for, they literally had other texts where they're like, we can't say this in writing, and then sent a text about it because they wanted to make sure to take her down. And make it make sense. Now we're here today, January 10th, as of filming. Justin released a voicemail in his attempt to say he has receipts, and the voicemail is just him saying that he had to go to the basement with his friends and family on the biggest night of his life, which should have been this great moment because of Blake and Ryan and the situation. Fascinating. And then a lot of the receipts that he released really reflect back on the same things that were already in the filing from Blake, which again, Blake's lawsuit is against Wayfarer Studios and Justin Baldoni. Justin Baldoni's lawsuit is against the New York Times for telling the story, for releasing the things that were released. It is not against Blake because that is a PR move to not countersue Blake. I'm just saying that's a PR move, y'all. The other thing is he released a text between them where Blake calls Lily, her character, sexy or something. And I guess he thought that was open invitation to call Blake sexy, open consent. And that's just not how consent works. So interesting. Let's talk about Blake's complaint and what is going on here. And what I saw that stood out to me personally as someone who follows pop culture stuff, but also bookish stuff. Okay, these are my notes, so this might be a little messy. So yeah, Blake filed the complaint, and this is done to verify that she can then sue because it's a California Civil Rights Department complaint. They have 60 days to review the complaint and deny or give the right to file. So we're still within that 60 days. It's going to take a minute until we find out what's going on here, right? Till we know that she's been given the right to sue and it goes to a full court. So that's part of why the document looks different, I guess, than people expected it to because there's no court on there and stuff. And also, I find that interesting because Justin's lawyers are well, this isn't even a real lawsuit. And it's no, because she's filing for the right to sue because it has to go through the civil rights thing. Fascinating. And that's a California law. I've watched a couple California lawyers break it down for me so I could understand. Okay, so then I started reading the full complaint once I had that under my belt. It's knowledge. And I'm going to tell you that I think you should read the whole complaint, y'all. I think reading that entire document was enlightening, to say the least. So, the document opens with the discussion around that January 4th petition put forward with things needed for them to return to set. Literally, there's 30 things they asked for by HR to happen, and nothing was done about. So, this included things like no showing nude photos or videos to Blake Lively and other cast members, including one of the guy's wives giving birth. Weird. Very weird. Not talking to Blake Lively's dead father, which is part of the New Age religion that Justin is part of. Apparently, I don't know a ton about this New Age religion situation. I don't have it in me. As someone whose dad is closer to death than not, I would lose my ever-loving mind if someone told me they touched my dead father. I would lose my mind. I need y'all to know that. I would lose my mind. Then another thing was no more adding new sex scenes to the book. And I think it's interesting that they were adding sex scenes because I don't feel like the book had that many sex scenes. It just seems weird. We then learned about the marketing situation because that was what flew my flag up a lot, right? Blake's marketing and the cast versus Justin's was very different. And that is because right before the premiere, Justin Baldoni decided to pivot, I'm assuming due to his publicist's advice, to protect his image, to talking about the domestic violence, survivor stories, elevating all of those things, while Blake Lively and the rest of the crew had to follow Sony's directive on the marketing. And I do think that's the disconnect there. I think that was what we were seeing, right? They also used that pivot that he did to kind of pit us against Blake Lively, it seems, via the text and other things. And this is also, I think, part of what made the, like, he's a good man, he's a feminist, he's that, like, people kind of crawl out of the woodwork because they don't like Blake. And again, I'm not really a fan of either person. I'm pretty different on both of these people. So I just feel like if I had a nickel for every time a man that like claims to be all these things reared their heads in my life or in the world as like maybe not what they present, I have quite a few nickels. I wish they were $100 bills, but that's fine. Then Justin Baldoni's old publicist, who left that firm and obviously her work phone behind, is shocked when this report came out, like when the New York Times article came out, because her text messages are in there. We need to have a discussion, everyone. As a reminder, if it's on your work phone or work computer, it is not yours. You can't stop it from being released in a discovery. You can't be mad in a Facebook group for publicists about the things that were said. I was stunned. She literally got into a Facebook group and was complaining. She was complaining about things that were said in the filing. What? And like that her texts were released. And her name and all these things. It's not hard to figure out who was doing this stuff. But yeah, she also, in those texts that were released, said that they can bury anyone, but they can't write that down. So when she posted a Facebook complaining, I was like, of course you said we can't write that down. And then you wrote it down. Yeah, it's not in the brief, but you wrote it down in your work phone. Then another thing that came out was like that Justin Baldoni was repeatedly improvising intimate scenes with no intimacy coordinator on set, even though that had been in the initial list of demands. And when Blake Lively expressed discomfort to that, apparently, supposedly, he said, I'm not even attracted to you. There's also discussion of how they didn't respect closed set policies when Blake Lively was having to do the birth scene and let non-essential crew through during that. The weight comments, apparently, also that article, I don't know if this is true or not. I'm not watching this movie, but apparently there was never actually a scene planned where he was picking her up. So the spin on that was really interesting, if that is the case, because why are you worried? This woman just had a baby. Then there are also texts in this filing that detail some of how they wanted to make the narrative that Ryan Reynolds helped with the script to flip more rumors up around when the strike was happening and the movie was on break. So from this filing, they also know that Justin Baldoni is just trying to protect his feminist branding. Because if any of this gets out, it's very damning to what his podcast is and all these things he supposedly stands for. So, Justin Baldoni is now suing the New York Times for breaking the news. Again, this is very different than the employee to HR civil rights dispute that Blake filed. So, different things, y'all. One thing I think we can take away from all of this is that sometimes we do gotta sit back and wait. And I think sometimes we need to have better media literacy around who and what is getting us these articles sometimes. You know, Variety and People, those are usually paid for by the publicists to post things. That is why you see new relationships in Variety or People, right? Like as an exclusive. And then like there's, you know, a list of less reputable, Dumas, all that is like not, you know, the same thing necessarily. But when stories are just like nonstop, I'm starting to stop and wonder, you know, and starting to think about who's feeding this information. And anytime it says like close sources, it's usually a publicist. I'm just saying that seems to be what comes out. So yeah, I also think we need to think about who is benefiting from the discourse, right? Who is, you know, able to gain the most from, you know, not being painted in a bad light. I'm sure it would have been very different if we had gotten Blake's suit right as after the movie premiere, but who knows? I also think the countersuit being against the New York Times versus Blake is also very telling in the fact that like we're doing this in like a way to be like, well, we can't countersue her because like one, there's no lawsuit yet, but two, it would be really weird. But I do think, you know, this is like our baseline of like what happened, and I will keep you updated in Romancelandia as we know more. But I think having this like baseline to know the happenings of everything is helpful. I also think, again, this is just a reminder that sometimes you do have to sit back and wait. We don't always have the full picture, and the way the media works, they want to push us in one way or the other, and so you just have to take your time and figure it out as things happen, because this was not the reveal I was expecting at the end of December. but here we are. So yeah, that is your rough timeline and my takeaways from reading the suits. I highly encourage everyone who is interested or curious to go read them for themselves as well. Take away your own, take away what you feel about it. I'm not going to tell you, obviously what way to fall, but I am going to say once again, two things can be true. We can dislike someone and we can also have them be a victim. There is no perfect victim. You can't, deny that something could have happened to someone. I also, in the suit, I didn't include a ton of it. There's some stuff about the other cast members too, a little bit. So that was interesting. But because of that, I'll be curious if some of them start to speak out, I guess, as time goes here. So just keep that in mind. There's no perfect victim, and you should not, just because you don't like somebody doesn't mean they can't be a victim. So yeah, I would love to know what y'all's takeaway are. Are you like me right now, where you're just kind of waiting to see as time goes what happens? And if so, let me know. If you have strong feelings one way or the other, we can talk about it down there. Again, we're not going to victim blame, and we're not going to be gross. So keep that in mind. But I just think overall this has been fascinating to kind of watch unfold from a marketing PR perspective. I don't know the last time we've had a big kerfuffle quite like this, So yeah, do any of that in the comments, and I will catch you all in just a few days in my next video. As always, if you want early access to things like Romancelandia, you can join my members for $1.99. Romancelandia supporter gets you access to these videos and Romancelandia monthlies, like any surprise ones I do, at least 24 to 48 hours before they go up. And, I appreciate it, but you don't have to. Otherwise, links to my friend anywhere on the internet that I am. And yeah, I will catch you all in just a few days in my next video. Bye.
Already packing, come with me. I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be. Life with no distractions. We'll get away. This is what we waited for.